Welcome to our channel History Saga. In order to punish mankind for their evil, undesired or unfair deeds, there have been number of most gruesome torture, mostly followed by execution, methods ever recorded in the history. Some of these worst methods of torture we will discuss in this video. So let's start. The brazen bull. Designed in ancient Greece, the brazen bull, also known as the Sicilian bull, was a solid piece of brass with a side door that could be opened and latched. With a fire set underneath, the victim would be put inside the bull and would be slowly roasted to death. The brazen bull was specifically designed to amplify the screams of the victim and make them sound like the bellowing of a bull. Impalement. In ancient Romania, those who were sentenced to death by impalement were forced to sit on a sharp and thick pole. When the pole was raised upright, the victim would eventually slide down the pole with their own weight. It took 3 days for the victim to die. Impalement was believed to be the most favored method of execution of Vlad the Impaler, who has been known to impale 20,000 people while eating his meal. Iron Maiden. This torture device consisted of an iron cabinet with a hinged front and spike-covered interior just enough to enclose a person. Once the victim is inside the frame, he would be unable to move due to the number of steel spikes that would impale him in every direction. Jagged edges would poke the victim inside while an interrogator asked him questions. Rat torture. This method involved a cage with one open side strapped against the victim's body. The cage would be filled with large rodents while a heating element was placed on the other side of it. With the application of intense heat, the rodents would try to escape by burrowing through the victim's body with deadly results. Saw torture. The victim is hung upside down to ensure that the blood will rush to their heads and keep them conscious during the torture procedure. The torturer would then cut the victim's body in half. Most were sawed only up to their abdomen to prolong the agony. Breaking wheel. This torture technique is done by first tying the limbs of the victim together to the spokes of a wooden wheel. The torturer will then slowly turn the wheel while simultaneously smashing the victim's limbs with an iron hammer. The victim would be left on the wheel to die. Spanish tickler. Spanish tickler was a very sharp claw-like instrument that the torturer would hold in their hand and rip the flesh on the tortured one by applying pressure on the skin. Usually, such torture would be performed in public and the torturer would take his time scarring the person inch by inch. In most cases, people who would undergo the Spanish tickler method would not survive to see another day because of the immense pain it caused. Bamboo torture. This is probably the most inventive method of torture ever discovered. Bamboo torture is that torture by letting the bamboo shoots grow into the body of the tortured one. Bamboo is one of the fastest growing plants on Earth. So an obvious use of this knowledge to our ancestors was to torture people with it. The death would be slow and painful. Those people were still alive when bamboo was growing right through them. Blood eagle. A brutal way in which Northmen murdered only the worst criminals. It was a religious act as well as execution because the life of the killed one was sacrificed to the gods. The ritual consisted of cutting open the back of the person with an axe, breaking the ribs apart, exposing lungs. Then they would stretch 2 sides of the upper body in opposite direction, creating wings out of flesh and skin, thus the eagle. Further, the lungs would be taken out of the ribcage still attached to the esophagus so the persons would be able to breathe to keep them alive until they finally die of blood loss. Flaying alive. Similar to blood eagle would be flaying alive torture, or in other words, skinning people alive. The torturers would make a few long cuts around the body and then pull it, separating the skin from the muscles. The worst part is that people wouldn't die immediately but could stay alive for days like that, without any skin. Eventually, they would die of obvious reasons like infection and blood loss. Their entire bodies would turn into one giant wound. Heretics Fork. This torture device consists of a metal piece with 2 opposing bi-pronged forks attached to a strap. One end of the device was pushed under the victim's chin while the other goes against the sternum. The victim is then hung from the ceiling and the strap was used to secure the heretic fork around the neck of the victim. If the victim's head dropped, the prongs would pierce the chest and throat. Scaphism. Scaphism was an extremely gruesome practice where a person would be stripped naked and tied up in a small boat where only their body would fit. Then they were fed extreme amounts of milk and honey to the point of diarrhea. On top of that, honey would be put all over their body, prioritizing face and genitals. After this, the boat would be left in a body of water, preferable to a swamp because of all the insects living there. The smell of human excrements and honey would attract all sorts of bugs, especially flies that would lay their eggs right on the person, after which larvae would start eating the tortured one alive. It was a slow death. Scaphism was especially popular in ancient Greek and Persian times. Thank you for watching this video. Do like this video and subscribe to this channel for more videos.